Hi everyone, I'm Kerianne with Graham Classroom. I have Todd Kane here with me today, one of our great guides for the Great Smoky Mountains. Hi Todd, how are you?
I am wonderful. It's a beautiful day here in Chicago.
Yes, I bet. So we are happy that you're able and available to sit down with us today. I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a summary of the trip, maybe some trip highlights.
Sure, I'd love to. The Smoky Mountains are probably my most favorite park to go to in the United States. Coincidentally, I've been to Great Smokies National Park more often than any other park, along with a lot of other people. Most people don't know this fact, but the Great Smokies National Park is the most visited national park in the country.
That came up in trivia the other day. Good
Yes.
trivia fact.
In fact, it has a little over 12 million visitors per year, which is more than the number 2 and number 3 combined. And those are the Grand Canyon and Zion National Park. So it's a well-known park, and it's just got magnificent attributes to it. I've led a number of trips to the Great Smokies. We typically will begin in Atlanta. I'll fly into Atlanta from wherever I happen to be and meet the school at the Atlanta airport, and then we take off. If time allows, there are a number of things we can do in Atlanta before we even head up to the park. There's the Martin Luther King National Memorial Park, which is right in downtown Atlanta, which includes his birthplace. There's a small park office and museum, as well as the Ebenezer Baptist Church, which a lot of schools just find very educational, and I love visiting those. We also sometimes will go over to Olympic Park in downtown Atlanta and visit one of the attractions there, the most popular being the Atlanta Aquarium, which is just fantastic.
Oh, wow.
So we'll spend a few hours there and then start on the road. It's about a 4-hour trip from Atlanta up to Great Smokies National Park. If time allows, we really like stopping at Lula Gorge State Park in Georgia. It's a gorge which is about a 1/4 mile across the top. It's like a mini Grand Canyon.
Oh, cool.
It goes down over 1,000 feet. There's steps leading down to the bottom, and you cross on a bridge near the bottom and then continue to the very bottom of the gorge. Over 1,200 steps, which is wonderful going down. The kids don't enjoy coming back up the 1,200 steps, but that's part of the adventure. There's also a trail around the rim and a very nice visitor center with exhibits from that area. It was once a very popular vacation area for the people from the Atlanta and southern Georgia areas. So after visiting Lula Gorge, we head up to the Smoky Mountains, and I love sitting in the front of the motor coach, because from about 50 miles away, you can begin to see the outline of the mountains in the distance and the silhouette.
Oh, wow.
And we're usually getting there around dusk. So it's just really nice seeing the sunset over the Smoky Mountains. We go through the town of Cherokee and then immediately into the Great Smokies National Park. We enter at the Oconaluftee Visitor Center, which is one of the 2 visitor centers in the park. There's a main road that goes across the park from Oconaluftee to Sugar Land's Visitor Center. At Oconaluftee, we'll get off the bus. Typically, we'll wander around. There's a visitor center, interpretive services with the Park Service, a museum, also a short film about the Great Smokies National Park and the whole area. There's also a farm museum right there, which, you know, after half a day in an airplane and another half a day in buses, the kids like getting out and stretching. You can walk around the farm museum, which has a number of different buildings, a recreation. It's the original buildings, but they've been moved to this location to recreate what a farm was like 150 years ago in the Smoky Mountains. Spend a little bit of time there, then we drive all the way through and find our lodging for the night. The first day we go back into the park, and perhaps my favorite hike with the kids is the Alum Cave hike. It's about 5 miles round trip, and it encompasses everything there is in the park. You start at a relatively low elevation, go through, cross a couple mountain streams, and through some laurel and rhododendron forests. And then as you start to gain elevation, you go up through ash trees and you get higher and higher, and there's fir trees. And eventually you get to Alum Cave, which has a whole history behind it. The kids are anxious. They're expecting a cave like you might go into in a mining expedition. This is very different. It's actually carved out of the side of the top of the mountain. And it was a source of alum, which was used by many of the Native Americans. And then eventually some of the minerals that were there actually contributed to both the North and the South during the Civil War. Then we hiked back down. There are several different hikes we do throughout the week in the national park. This would be the longest one at 5 miles round trip. And it's usually, you know, some of the kids just want to roar right ahead. They have a lot of energy and they're very capable. For some, it's a challenge, and I love seeing them, you know, feel like they can't do it, and then see that sense of accomplishment when they get up to the cave itself and all their friends are waiting for them there.
I know that feeling all too well.
You've been there.
Yeah, I've been there. Yep.
There are other hikes we do in the park throughout the week. Number of magnificent waterfalls. Laurel Falls is one of my favorite. It's one of the shorter hikes. It's only a couple miles round trip, but it's a beautiful waterfalls that's worth the hike. Much easier than the Alum Cave hike done on the first day. Let me see, what else do we do there? There are 4 operating grist mills within the park. And one of them, if you hit it right, the Mingus Mill, is great because they mill cornmeal there, and you can take home a bag of freshly ground cornmeal and see how the settlers there lived 150 years ago. It's just a really kind of stepping back in time. There's another area of the park known as Cave. Wait a second. Caves Cove. Okay. Which is not accessible by the big motor coaches, but when we have a smaller group and a smaller vehicle, we can get down there. And it's a settlement that was made in a valley in between 2 rows of mountains. And it's just, it's an old farming community, and many of the buildings there have been restored. And it's just, once again, an opportunity to step back in time. The Great Smoky Mountains are part of a longer range, and probably everybody's heard of the Appalachian Mountains. They run from central Alabama all the way up to Newfoundland in Canada. And one of the highest peaks, or the highest peak in the Smoky Mountains, is Clingmans Dome. And we always incorporate that as one of our hikes. It's a little over 6,600 feet in elevation. It is the 3rd highest peak on the East Coast. Many people think of New England as having the highest peaks. The highest is in North Carolina, and this is not too far from that location. Clingmans Dome is a nice, relatively easy hike. It's a paved pathway to the top, so it's ADA accessible for those that require some additional assistance. Great. But I always like to take a group on the back trail. There's a back trail that nobody knows about. And we take that and we go up to the top. And at the very end, we're hiking on the Appalachian Trail. Wow. If you haven't heard of it, it's the longest hiking trail on the East Coast, over 2,000 miles in length. It goes from Georgia to Maine. And we get to hike a little bit on the Appalachian Trail. And on a good day, if it's early in the season, we'll see some of the through hikers. Cool. People that are hiking, attempting to hike the entire distance of the trail in one season. So we've seen through hikers on the trail. There's a lot of wildlife that can be seen throughout the park. But when you get to the top of Clingmans Dome, there's an observation tower that you can ascend. And from the top of that, you get this magnificent 360-degree vista of North Carolina and Tennessee. The park itself occupies both states. And kind of right down the middle is the state line, and with North Carolina on the east and Tennessee on the west. And you get magnificent views into both states. You can see Knoxville, Tennessee,
Cool.
from the top of Clingmans Dome. Kids always enjoy that. It's one of the favorite highlights of the trip.
So what other things like do the students really enjoy, or the teachers? What's cool for them to see and do on this trip?
It's different. I think it's different for the teachers than it is for the students. I think the teachers really enjoy some of the historic sites on the trip, some of the recreated villages. The students are more outdoors. They like the excitement of going up the mountains and a sense of accomplishment. One day of the trip we always spend over in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and on the northeast side of the park. And there we spend half a day whitewater rafting and the other half of the day zip lining, all at one location.
Okay.
And that's another opportunity where I've seen many kids get off the bus and they're filled with trepidation.
Yeah.
And they really don't know if they want to do the zip lining. It looks kind of scary to them. But without exception, once they do it, they can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
That is always the highlight of the trip, is the zip lining until the afternoon. And we go whitewater rafting.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like the funnest day of the trip for me.
We spend the afternoon on the Pigeon River whitewater rafting, and then the kids it's always a toss-up. Sometimes I'll do a survey on the motor coach going back to the lodging for the night. I'll say, who thought whitewater rafting was best? And it's typically a 50-50 split between the two. One of the interesting things that they get to see when we're over in Gatlinburg, and you can also see it from parts of the park, was in 2016, there was a massive fire in the Smoky Mountains, a wildfire, started by two young campers who didn't intend to start a fire, but they did, and it got out of hand. It burnt over 11,000 acres in the park and another 6,000 acres outside of the park. Wow. The scars of that remain. It's referred to as the chimney top fire. Chimney tops it's a series of mountain peaks in the park, which are no longer accessible because of the unstable ground resulting from the heat from the fire. But you can see the scars of that. And it's just a reminder to us all that, nature is very fragile. We need to respect it and take care of it. That fire came right down to literally to the edge of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and was about to burn down the structures in the town when the winds reversed, and it went back up the mountain and spared the town for the most part. Yeah, pretty dramatic.
Yes, that's history right there. So what's your favorite part of the trip?
My favorite part of the trip is Laurel Falls.
Okay.
Laurel Falls is just a beautiful waterfalls. It's a nice hike. We do it towards the end of the week, and the kids always enjoy it. It's a great photo opportunity to bring photos back to the family.
Awesome. Very
But
cool.
all of the hike, just being outdoors is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. So what are you most looking forward to with getting groups back out on the trails on this trip?
It's always breathtaking, as I said, as we're approaching the Smoky Mountains from Atlanta. When you first see the silhouettes of the mountains, you just know you're in for a spectacular week. I love the mountains. I love the fresh air. I love seeing kids come alive.
Yeah.
Many of the kids that have taken on these trips have never seen mountains like this. They've never been out in the wilderness. And oftentimes we get to see wildlife that they've only read about.
Yeah.
In the Smoky Mountains, you have a variety of mammals. It has more different varieties of salamanders than any other part in the United States. So if you're into digging in streams, you see a lot of different salamanders. But there's red fox in the Smoky Mountains. On Clingmans Dome, I've only seen this once, but there are flying squirrels if you're there in the Yes.
That is so cool.
Flying squirrels, you have red fox, bear. We typically will see bear somewhere in the park. There's a lot of black bear in the park. Very large herd of elk near the Oconaluftee Lodge when we first come into the park.
Mhm.
In the evening, they're often in the field right behind that farm museum village that I spoke about. So you can see elk. The wildlife is just amazing. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It really makes me feel whole when I'm out in the mountains.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. It's always cool to see some different wildlife when you're out on those trails. Very
right.
different than, just seeing them driving by in a car.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to kind of describe the trip and talking about those trip highlights. And we are definitely looking forward to getting you back out there with some groups in the near future.
And one of the highlights is right behind me.
Yes, I love that.
One of the water crossings on one of the hikes.
Very
So
cool.
what an interesting thing about the Great Smokies is because you have so many different elevations, you have a lot of different microclimates.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there as late March, early April, and some of the roads can be closed due to snow. Lower elevations are still open. No matter what time of year you're there, wildflowers are in bloom somewhere.
Wow.
A lot of different varieties of wildflowers, depending on the elevation and the microclimate. So it's just a beautiful park, and I'm so glad that the federal government a long time ago decided to designate it as a park.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. And we will be talking soon with more groups, okay?
Okay.
All right.
That was fun.